Hello everyone, thanks for tuning into the latest vlog update here on the Gavin Partridge YouTube channel. So throughout the general election campaign, we're going to be bringing you regular polling roundup videos. We did the last one of those yesterday evening. We'll probably do another one tomorrow evening in between the polling roundups. And they'll probably get more frequent actually as the campaign goes on. Remember, we're still early doors for the campaign. We haven't actually had the official dissolution of Parliament and the official beginning of the general election campaign. Yet we're still in the feeling out period, so polls will be increasing over the next few weeks. But in between the polling roundups, we will be having a look at other interesting topics that are kind of relevant to the election and also relevant to polling. And I thought for this one we'd have a look at the 1993 Canadian federal election and the opinion polls that happened during that period. Now, why, you may ask, would we be looking at a Canadian election that took place over 30 years ago? The reason that we're going to be doing that is that in that election, the governing Conservative Party of Canada was completely and utterly obliterated and was replaced by a Reform Party, and the governing party was like the Canadian version of our Labour Party, actually the Liberal Party of Canada. So we're going to have a look. There's been a bit of speculation about whether the Conservatives are facing Canadian 1993 style oblivion and wipeout. You know, there's been quite a bit of speculation online and in the media about that. So we're going to have a drill down into the polling of the 1993 Canadian election and then compare it to the current situation. I thought that would be quite an interesting topic for this vlog. So if you enjoy the vlogs on the channel at the moment, please do like, share, subscribe. Thanks so much to everybody for doing that, and make sure you leave a comment. Let me know what you think about this and all of the scenarios that are currently going on. So at Wikipedia, and we're looking at the 1993 Canadian federal election. So just to give you a bit of a summary about this. The 1993 Canadian federal election was held on the 25th of October 1993 to elect members of the House of Commons of the 35th Parliament of Canada. Considered to be a major political realignment, it is one of the most eventful elections in Canada's history. Two new regionalist parties emerged, finishing second and third in the seat count. Most notably, the election marked the worst defeat for the governing party at the federal level and among the worst ever suffered by a governing party in the Western democratic world. In a landslide, the Liberal Party, led by Jean Chrétien, I don't know how to pronounce that, so sorry, I'm not very good with French, won a majority government. The election was called on September the 8th, 1993, by the new Progressive Conservative Party leader, Prime Minister Kim Campbell, near the end of her party's 5-year mandate. So they had won the previous election in 1998. They're nearing the end of their 5-year term, maximum 5-year term. And so Prime Minister Campbell called the election in that autumn on September the 8th, 1993. When she succeeded long-term Prime Minister Brian Mulroney and assumed office in June, the party was deeply unpopular due to the failure of the Meech Lake and Charlottetown Accords, the introduction of the goods and services tax, and the early 1990s recession. The Progressive Conservatives were further weakened by the emergence of new parties that were competing for its core supporters. Campbell's initial effort helped the party recover somewhat in pre-election polls before the writs were issued. However, this momentum did not last, and the Progressive Conservatives suffered the most lopsided defeat for a Canadian governing party at the federal level, which was also the worst defeat ever suffered by a governing party in the Western democratic world, losing all but 2 of their 156 seats and more than half of their vote from 1988. The Progressive Conservatives also launched controversial tax ads during the campaign, etc., etc., etc. We won't go any further. So these are how the numbers stack up for the 1993 1983 Canadian federal election. So the Liberal Party, which remember is our version of the Labour Party, went up by 96 seats. They from the previous election, 1988. They had 81 before, and they won 177. So this party, Bloc Québécois, I think that is, won 44 seats, and they went up 44 seats, should say, and won 54 seats. So they had 10 before. They became the official opposition. Therefore, Nationalist Party, I think they are. And Reform sounds familiar, doesn't it? Which was the right-wing party that re-emerged to the right of the Progressive Conservatives. They have before been on 1 seat, and they went up 51 seats to win a total of 52. New Democratic, which I think is like our version of the Liberal Democrats, really. They actually lost seats in this election. I could be wrong about that. I don't know great deal about Canadian parties, but I think this is like the New Democratic, like our version of the Liberal Democrats. They lost 34 seats. They had 44 seats to start, and they went down just 9 seats. But the most dramatic movement, of course, is with the Progressive Conservatives, the governing party, led by the then Prime Minister and party leader Kim Campbell. They went down 154 seats. They had 156 seats to begin with. It left them with a total of just 2 seats, and had complete and total wipeout. They won 16% of the vote in that election, compared to 18% for the new right-wing party, which was Reform. So that's actually beaten by the Reform Party, and the winning party, which was the Liberals. They had 41.2% of the vote. So between like the Conservatives and like the Liberals who formed the government, there was something like, I don't know, 25% difference there between those two parties. So this is how the polling graph for that election looks. Obviously, the Liberal Party, our version of the Labour Party, is in red. We've got the Conservatives here, starting off in the lead in 1988. They won that 1988 general election, but look how they collapse as we go through the latter part of the 90s and latter part of the 80s into the early 90s, go underneath 20% of the vote. This is the New Democratic Party. Again, I think this is like our version of the Liberal Democrats. They kind of fall away. There'll be people in Canada maybe watching this who can tell me if that's right or not. But the most interesting, line is actually the Green Line, which is the Reform Party. So look how through most of the late 80s into 90s they flatlined away, but into the election you see how this Green Line, which is the Reform Party, lifts up. They actually go ahead of the Conservatives only very narrowly. You'll notice there was a bit of a revival in the Conservative vote share. They did actually at one point reach parity with the Liberals, but it was a false dawn. That's when, as it's stated by Brian Mulroney, quit as the leader. Kim Campbell became the leader, and called the election into the autumn of 1993. So there was a slight recovery, but in the end, the Conservatives ended up where they have been, through most of 1991 and 1992 as well, which is just here underneath 20% of the vote, while the Liberals ended up around 40% of the vote. So how does that compare with our current situation? Well, that's the polling graph that we see right now. So the gap between Labour and the Conservatives is actually very similar to what it was in Canada. So the Labour Party hovering somewhere in the mid-40s with their trend line. The Conservatives are hovering somewhere in the low to mid-20s, with their trend line. So the gap generally is around 20, possibly 25%. That's roughly what the gap was between the Conservatives and the Liberals in Canada in 1993. But it's one big difference, though. So far, it may change, but so far our Reform Party, starting off as a Brexit party just here, whilst it has lifted up, we see the Reform trend line quite significantly under still the Conservative trend line. So if we go back to Canada in 1993, and this was the case though in Canada in 1993 throughout most of the Parliament and even into the start of the election campaign, the Reform Party was down there, but eventually, of course, the Reform Party did overtake the Conservative Party, Progressive Conservative Party. So, quite interesting that at the moment we see a gap very similar between Labour and the Conservatives to the Liberals and the Conservatives in Canada. But the one thing that's different, one thing that seems to be missing at the moment, is that our Reform Party is not anywhere, well, I won't want to say not anywhere, but it's not really close to overtaking our Conservative Party. There is something like 10, probably 12, 13% difference between Conservatives and Reform. That said, of course, it's very early days in the campaign. It wouldn't be totally unreasonable if the Conservatives line did something like that. The Reform line did something like that through the course of the campaign. But that could happen and a crossover could occur. But at the moment, there isn't a great deal of sign of that. And actually, the Reform Party has dropped a little bit since about the beginning of April, although that drop has seems to have mostly gone to Labour, whose trend line has ticked up very slightly. We haven't seen like a Reform to Conservative switch. If anything, it looks like more Reform to Labour. So the Conservatives might be heading for a 1993 style complete and total wipeout. I would say at the moment the Conservatives are probably heading for certainly one of their worst defeats in history. You know, it looks like, and we will cover this in other vlogs, it looks like, you know, it could be 1997, it could be 1906 when the Conservatives were very, very, very heavily defeated. If you go way back to 1832 and the Duke of Wellington, there was a catastrophic result for the Conservative Party that kept them out of power, I think, for about 40 years, something like that, other than, you know, an occasional little stint, but didn't last more than a year or two anyway, between large Liberal victories. So, yeah, it looks like it's going to be a very heavy defeat for the Conservatives. Maybe short of complete wipeout. So, you know, famous last words, but I would be surprised at the moment, based on how that looks compared to how that looks, I would be surprised if the Conservatives have a 1993 Canadian-style result. But they are in deep, deep trouble. You know, there's no getting away from that. The Conservatives are in big trouble here. And they need to do something, I think, really to not only ensure, at the moment they're trying to squeeze the Reform vote, of course, so they need to do something to ensure that they don't fall and lose further votes to Reform, but they do need to try and narrow this gap to Labour a little bit, and that will prove very, very hard to do, I think, because they're appealing to Reform voters, you know, to ensure that Reform don't have a surge. That will probably put off a lot of the Conservative to Labour switches that have taken place throughout the course of this Parliament, and particularly since around the autumn of 2022. Worth pointing out what happened after that election. So the Reform and Conservative parties eventually merged. So we go on to a 1997 election. We still see that the Progressive Conservative Party are in business. They actually won 18 seats to go up to 20 seats in the subsequent election, but still in a very bad scenario. And the Reform Party became the official opposition in the 1997 Canadian election to the governing Liberal Party. They went up another 10 seats and they won 60 seats to become the official opposition. The scenario carried on, I think, into the next election, which is 2000. And then we see that we've got an alliance party appeared. So that's a renamed, that's the renamed Reform Party. I think, and they win 66 seats there. Progressive Conservatives still struggling on. They actually lost 3 seats in that election to go down to 12. And the governing Liberal Party just keeps expanding their majority, and they win 107 seats, going up another 11 seats. In 2004, we see that a Conservative Party appears. So basically, Reform and the Conservatives merged in the 2004 general election of Canada, and they retake their place then as the official opposition. As the right is united, they win 99 seats, which is up 27. Although quite how you work that out, I'm not sure, given that it's 2 parties merge together. The Liberals go down 33 seats, still governing with 135. But in the next election, which is 2006, maybe it's only 13 years after the complete wipeout of the Progressive Conservatives, we actually see the Conservative Party, again, it's a merger of Reform and the Progressive Conservatives, getting back into power, and they win 124 seats, going up 26. They become, with a minority government, they become, like the governing party. The Liberal Party go down another 13, and they get 103 seats. And then by the 2008 Canadian election, actually, I believe Conservative Party gets a majority government. They get 143 seats. The Liberal Party go down further to 77 seats. And so by 2008 election, after governing for 4 years, I think as a minority government, the Conservatives form a majority government. Of course, since then, they've lost power again to Trudeau's Liberals. At the moment, they're on the way back. If we come through to the current Canadian election, we can see, which is going to be just there, we can see and go to opinion polling. There you can see, but at the moment, in Canada, it's like the reverse of what's happening here. The governing Liberal Party, Trudeau's party, is dropping, and the Conservative opposition is lifting up. It looks as though Canada at the next election, which will have to be held, I think, by the 20th of October 2025. So it's still time for a recovery of the Liberal position. But anyway, at the moment, the Conservative Party of Canada is in the driving seat. Looks like it's going to be forming the next government. And again, just 13 years after the total wipeout and oblivion of the Progressive Conservative Party in the 1993 Canadian election, the Conservatives were back in business. So nothing ever, back in business as a governing party, albeit with a merger with the Reform Party. So nothing lasts forever is basically the point in politics. And, parties come and go, get landslide majorities, small majorities, minority governments as well. Very occasionally you'll get a complete and total realignment, and you'll get a party replacing another party, etc. But in the end, it's all swings and roundabouts. So many Conservatives are watching this and worrying that their party is going to be facing oblivion. It's possible that it will do, that they will do, but 10 years, 15 years, maybe, even if that happens, they'll be back. That's certainly what the scenario in Canada would imply. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you think. Is the Conservative Party facing a Canadian 1993 style wipeout? Will it be more like 1997? Where do you think the Conservative defeat, if it is a defeat, is going to rank? Let me know in the comments what you think about all of this. And we will be back with a polling roundup for you tomorrow. So for this one, that's all for now. And thanks for watching.